Hello and welcome to this webinar on AI in Tynes. My name is Stephen. I lead the product team here at Tynes, and I'm so excited to show you what we've been building here today. So to state the obvious, this is a big day for Tynes. We've been building some of these features for quite a while. And although we're going to make a bit more noise soon, so we're going to have kind of a marketing release quite soon after this, we couldn't wait any longer. We wanted to get these features into our customers and our users' hands. And that's what today is all about. So everything you're going to see today, if you're a user or a customer of Tynes already, or even if you just sign up today, you will see these features in your tenant. Now, one thing I want to point out first there, if you're a pre-existing customer, you will have to explicitly enable the AI settings and you'll need to be a tenant owner to do that. So do that in your main menu. We've done that because we know some of you out there have policies and procedures that you need to follow in your company before adopting any AI. So once you opt in, you'll have everything you see here today. So a big day for Tynes, a big day hopefully for our users and customers also. And we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff. So I'm going to tell you obviously about the features, and most of today will be spent on demos. You can probably see my tabs lurking up here. We're also going to talk about how we develop the features, how we think about AI at Tynes. We're going to talk a lot about privacy and security. We're going to have a special guest appearance from somebody who's been using these AI features to build real production workflows. And finally, we're going to have time for questions. So please, if anything comes to mind for you, drop a note or a comment or a question in the comments box to the side of this video. And yeah, I'll just say welcome and we'll kick off. So first of all, I want to begin with a bit of a policy position or a statement on AI in general. You know, it's hyped, but it's real. And I say hyped because obviously this is, just the topic du jour, what everybody is thinking and talking about right now, including all of the vendors in like the security, the IT space, etc. I promise this is my only slide, by the way, which has an AI generated background. I asked ChatGPT for a AI hype representation. That's what you see back here. So it's hyped. And I got to say, at times, we're somewhat contrarian. We don't like doing what all the rest are doing. Typically, that's not our style. In this case, though, we really do believe in what's happening, right? AI is real. This generation of large language models represents a huge moment of technological disruption, at least as big as the smartphone was in the late 2000s, possibly much bigger. Maybe it's as big as the internet. Some are saying it'll be as big as the Industrial Revolution. We don't know yet. The wave is not yet crested, but we know enough to say that it's real. And yet there is a lot of hype. And I would put it to you that if you actually look at most AI product features, so not the AI models themselves, but the product features that vendors are building with AI, they're mostly just not that good. A lot of the features you're seeing being released are what we call demoware, something that will tell a story well or look impressive in a sort of purchasing process, but not actually stand up to real usage or scrutiny. So I say this because we have worked very hard on what we're going to show you today to not just be demoware. Yes, I will show you some exciting demos, but rest assured that there are so many things on the cutting room floor that didn't make it. We have held our product bar, I hope, very high, and hope to show you that today. But let's get into it. So two fantastic features that I want to unveil today. The first is automatic mode. It's a new mode for our event transform action. And the second feature is the AI action. And this is a whole new action type. Finally, we're adding our 8th action to that list of 7 that we've had for so long. So you're going to best understand what the two of these features are when I get into a demo in a moment. But I want to just give you a very high level overview, and particularly an overview of the difference between them. So let's talk about automatic mode. This is something that helps you build better workflows fast, and really emphasis on the fast here. You'll see that in the demo. Author data transformations with all the power of code, but without the need to read or write code. So again, helping you build better workflows fast. The AI action, on the other hand, is something that helps your workflows run better. So it helps you run better workflows. And what that means is that you're able to directly access and use these large language models at any point in the workflow that you build in Tynes. So again, build on this side, run on this side. And so much of what you do in Tynes involves building or involves running that I really like the coverage we've got between these two features. Now, one last thing before I get into the demo, and it's really like it's sort of a third innovation alongside these two features, but it's not a feature itself. What it is the foundation on which the two of these features run on. And that is access to private and secure large language models. So a lot of the effort and the building we've done is actually to establish a very private and secure way of having access to a large language model in a Tines tenant. Both of these features are resting on this, and we'll talk a little bit more about exactly what I mean by private and secure shortly. But for now, let's take a look at the product, and I think this is really going to make those quick explanations I gave come to life. I'm going to start really, really small here. So we're in my example Tines tenant, and I've got a simple API call here to a weather service, which is going to fetch the current weather for my location here in Boston. So let's run that and see what we get back. So we get back some event data here, and what it's going to give us back is like sort of scientific, like weather information. So I'm going to use this as just a very simple example to show you the mechanics of how you use the automatic mode. I start by dragging and dropping the event transform action. I'll go ahead and connect that up. And then there's a new mode in the list called automatic. So once you pick that, you're using the new piece of product that we're talking about. I'll go ahead and give this a better name. Just call it like analyze weather. And what next? So you'll see that there's two fields here. There's input, which is going to be the data that you want to transform. And then there's guidance, which is a description of how this action is going to transform that input into whatever output you want. And if you click on either of these fields, you'll get to this new area of the product, and it's a popover modal. And this is where we're going to build our transformation. So as it says, transform anything, describe what output you want for the input. We'll take it from there. And it's actually defaulted to the upstream action. So I've got my weather data here as the input. All I've got to do is say what output I want and then press generate. So let's start really small here. I'm just going to say, get the temperature. I'll go ahead and run this. And something pretty magical just happened. It might have been too fast to even notice. So pay really close attention. I'll do it once more. Pretty quick. But what it did was the AI wrote code. And here it's very, very simple code. It just has to access the temp property on the body. But then it very quickly executed that code. And it shows me the result of the execution. And this is actually a technically correct answer. It's 296 degrees Kelvin here in Boston, but that's an unnecessarily scientific unit. So let's say convert from K to F. And again, I'll generate. And once again, it very quickly writes code. This time it's a little bit more complicated. It runs that code almost instantaneously and shows me the answer. And the point is that I just continue iterating like this. So I'll maybe round that number. It looks a bit long. Round to nearest degree. Again, regenerate, generates the code, shows me the output. And so this is the current temperature in Boston. It's 74 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, it's important to note that everything we're doing in this modal is experimental. It's a bit of a playground. Until I press save, I do not touch or modify the running workflow. So the workflow behind here has not been changed yet. And that's to encourage this sense of iteration and freedom. You'll even see here that it encourages me to see my history. So if I do the keyboard shortcut there, Command Shift up, I can step back in time and see the previous generations that I had. I can even do that on the code tab. If I'm interested in reading the code, I can see how the code changed. But here's the interesting part. I don't actually get to edit this code. I'm going to talk more about that in a moment, but let's just finish this off by saying return a sentence including the temperature, humidity, and wind speed. And there we go. Temperature is 74 degrees, humidity is 53%, and the wind speed is 2.68 meters per second. So at this point, I'm going to press save. And now we're going to see, I'm going to explain why you don't get to edit the code. It's a really crucial detail. So I'll save this. Now, only at this point is the behavior locked into my workflow. And what's locked in, at this point, it's got nothing to do with AI. What's locked in is the code that the AI wrote. So really, that's what I mean by being a build time AI feature. It's helping us write that code, but now the workflow is just going to consistently run the code itself. So let's go ahead and run this and see a live output. And while that's running, I'll just point out how readable this becomes. So now somebody else coming to this workflow, trying to understand how this step works, they can really just read this English text and they have pretty much the full answer. They can also, of course, look at the event data, see what it puts out. There's that sentence again. But the combination of these two things really tells you everything you need to know. The code is more of an implementation detail that was authored at that moment and then locked in place. And so let me just open this up once more. So I mentioned that we don't let you change the code in here, right? You can copy and paste it, but you can't edit it. The reason is we want this description, this guidance, to be guaranteed up to date and in sync with what behavior is running in the action. If you were able to come in here and customize the code as a programmer, you would lose that parity. Now, I will point out one cool feature though, which is that if you want to take first party control over this code that it's written, you can do that. You can press copy as run script. You can head out to your storyboard. You can paste it in. And now you will have a full copy of that, which you can actually edit the code for. But in general, we discourage this because the beauty of this automatic mode is that you don't need to be able to write code, nor do you need to be able to read code to understand. So this really levels the playing field between technical and non-technical users, what we're all about. All right, let's take a look at a slightly tougher example. So here I've got we'll run this, but I've got a set of measurement data points. So this is, imagine it's some sort of a DevOps system, maybe like a DevSecOps system, and we're measuring how long things take. So we've got, for each item, we've got an ID, we've got how long it took at the start, so the initial latency, how long it took at the end, the final latency, and some end state. And what we want to do is, for this potentially very long list, we want to see the 3 slowest items. Okay, so to do that, we're going to need to do something like add up these latencies, sort the list by that added up total latency, and take the first 3 things. And actually, as it turns out, this is a difficult thing to achieve in Tines formulas. It's probably possible, but I think it would take some creativity. You might even need to use things like our explode mode. But let's see what we can do with automatic mode. So I'll drag on again the event transform action, call it output, put it into auto mode. I'll just remind myself of this data structure. So again, we've got initial latency and final latency. So again, we want to get the 3 slowest things. So what I'll just try here is exactly what comes to mind. Get the 3 slowest items based on total latency. So this may work. Maybe it'll need future refinement. Let's give it a go. Again, it's a safe space to iterate. That looks pretty good. So it's given me, I think what it's done is it's probably added up the latencies and given the slowest. But maybe if I say objects, because I actually want to get back the original objects. Close. Now it's giving me the IDs. So I'll just say return full objects from the source list. And there we have it. So again, it took a couple of goes, took a little bit of iteration. All of these answers I think were correct, but by eventually clarifying exactly what I want, we got what we needed here. Again, I save, I lock in that behavior. So looking back to the first thing we did, analyzing that weather, I think that was probably developing that sentence and converting the Fahrenheit. That was probably, something like 5 to 10x faster than I could do it with, the previous tools. This data transformation was probably a lot more. It was probably, 50x faster. Honestly, that might have taken me quite a few minutes of very deliberate thought to get right. There, it just took a few iterations. So I want to show you a final example, which I think is even, well, we'll see if it works, but I think it's going to be even more spectacular in the time saving it'll offer. And this is approaching something a bit more realistic. So we're going to be interacting with Slack here, which is super common for people who build in Tines. You're often sending messages to Slack or to Microsoft Teams or other places like that. And so in this hypothetical example, we've got some findings. Okay, so we've detected some vulnerabilities. Let's have a look. They're buried in here. And for each one, we've got like an ID, when the CVE was published, what system it affects, a description, etc. And often when you're building a notification to Slack, you want to really make it look good because you're going to be sending this to your team. And what we always encourage people to do, in fact, if you go to our template here, it will encourage you to use the Slack block kit builder. This is a great way to construct really nice, visually appealing messages in Slack. So I've done that here. And I've got an example of a pretty nice looking Slack message that we're going to send. So this is the sort of thing I want to do. the following CVEs have been recently observed, the name of the CVE, the date, the system it affects, a nice quote for whatever text is involved, and then a link to the full details, a little emoji, and an acknowledge button in the footer. So this would be thinking about how we would apply this style to these incoming CVEs. We're going to basically need to fill in the blank here. And again, thinking about how we do this with the pre-existing tools in Tines, I think it would actually take many, many event transform actions. I'd probably need one for like the top block, and then I'd need to somehow loop through for each of the CVEs, and then I need to apply the footer. I might have to explode or implode. There might be a genius way to do it with formulas, but it would take me, again, some pretty serious thought. Let's see what we can do here in automatic. So I'll call this blocks, and we've got our data here. Okay, great. Let's hop in. So once more, it's assumed that I want to just operate on the incoming data, which is correct. We've got our data here. And now I'm going to just try something pretty ambitious. I'm going to go back to the block kit builder and copy the payload. So that's the full JSON payload copied. And I'm just going to try something ambitious here and say, fill in the CVEs in the Slack blocks template, and then I'll just give it the full JSON. So I've just pasted this in. And we'll see if this works. And maybe I'll need to give it some more cues, like tell it where to put in which piece of text. But I'm just going to see how it does. Let's try it out. It's going to be writing a bit more code this time because there's quite a lot to step through. But it's already done. It's already run it. And I think just at a glance, that's looking actually pretty good. I'm seeing that it's, for example, putting in some of the real text here into the body. Now, it's hard to actually say if this worked perfectly when just looking at JSON. So what I'll do is I'll save it, and then let's run this, and we'll take a look in my test Slack channel once it's finished. So it's done now. Let's have a look and see if this worked. And there it is. So the following CVs have been recently observed. I'm seeing the correct title, date, system name. I'm seeing all the text. I'm seeing the footer, and an acknowledge button for each one. So this, I think, is where the automatic transform mode is particularly exceptional, is when you need to build up big, messy data structures like this. And I'd even argue that here, like how many times faster was that than it would have taken? Probably at least 100x faster, I would say. But not only is this faster to author, I actually think this is much more maintainable too, because if I ever want to update the Slack blocks template, I can just copy this, go back to the block kit builder, right? Paste it in here, edit it, and then sort of put it back in this initial place. Again, previously, you'd probably have to divide this among many different actions, and it would be a big job to re-implement any change. But here, not just faster to write, but also more understandable and more maintainable. And I think, again, just pretty remarkable that we were able to write that quite intricate code, including some stuff like templating so quickly. Those are my examples for automatic mode. Now, again, we've got a special guest coming in a little while. So I'm trying to show you the real basics, the zoomed in parts of the features here. A little later, we're going to look at a more end-to-end production use case. But let's now turn our attention to the AI action. And I'm going to keep this even a little bit shorter here because it's so simple, really, in how it works. So the first thing to note is how you get it. It's here in your list of actions. We've put it side by side with Event Transform because it has quite a lot in common. It's almost like a runtime, runtime version of what a lot of what automatic mode of Event Transform does. So it feels really nice side by side here. I'll go ahead and drag it on. And we are going to, for now, I'm just going to do the simplest possible thing. So I'm going to use the default prompt here. We're given this, every time you drag it on, we just give you this default prompt, summarize the following data, and then you can put in whatever your data is. So let's connect this up. I've got an example guard duty alert here. So an example alert from an AWS security system with its full structure. I'll wire this up very quickly. And let's give this a try. So again, this is like straight out the box. Summarize the following data. We're just going to see what it does. The first thing to point out is that the AI action is another action. It's obvious, it's stating the obvious, but you can see there it runs, it displays its progress, it produces an event, just like any other action. But the event it produces is going to output what the language model decided to output. So here you go. We've asked it to summarize, and it's very good at tasks like summarization. Here we're using our default model, which is Claude 3 Haiku. What have we got? The provided data is a JSON object, represents a guard duty finding, breaks down all the details. Pretty good. Let's take a look at a few other sort of out-of-the-box examples we have. So every time you drag on one of these actions, we give you a link to our template library. And I'm going to show you some of those, and we'll try them out here. So you can just drag on the template. I'm going to choose Analyze Alert, which is a really nice fit here because we've got a guard duty alert. Let's connect that up. And I'm going to do one more. Let's drag on another one of these. And this time we'll pick Normalized Security Event Data. So just a quick way to preview some of these inbuilt prompts. And what we've done here is we've given you some pretty well vetted prompts, although they're all quite simple, that tend to work quite well. And here we're not really trying to say this is the perfect way to do it. We're rather giving you a sense of how to write these prompts. So you can see they both start with act as an expert cybersecurity engineer. Here's what you got to do. Here's the data you're gonna use in your analysis. So once again, I'm going to wire up our example guard duty alert here. I'll do that for both actions. And let's run this again. So again, all actions running just like Tines. If these were connected to downstream actions, they'd be passing the events all as normal. But let's take a look at what we've got here. So once again, we were asking it to normalize incoming data here to this pretty simple schema. So, title, description, recommended action, etc. Let's see how it did. There you have it, like a pretty beautiful JSON of exactly what we asked for. We've got like our nice numeric accuracy rating and threat rating. And you'd want to obviously read this carefully and make sure it was a good analysis of the type of data coming through. But in this case, this is correct. This is the exact description of what is happening in the security alert. Similarly, we've got our analyze alert event, which is done. And that's done as kind of a simpler version. Recommendations, risk rating, risk explanation. Once again, we're seeing nice structured data here. Here's what the recommendations are. Here's what the risk rating is. We're already seeing early uses here where you do this initial analysis before you pass it to a case management system. Really nice enrichment, a better Slack notification, something more human readable, better structuring and restructuring of data. And again, that's just the out-of-the-box starting points that we've given you. So I want to show you one last example, and this is going to be a little bit more end-to-end, a little bit more realistic. And it involves one of my favorite Tines features, which is pages. So let's take a look at what we've built here. So this is an IT help desk. Anybody who's worked at any company is familiar with this. Sometimes something's broken and you've got to ask for help. And this is the end user view of the Pages app that's been built with Tines. And this is obviously the builder's view of the same app. And what we've done here is we've added an AI step. So typically a help desk app like this is going to create a case in a case management system like Tines Cases or Jira or ServiceNow for the IT team to work. Maybe you'd send the person who wrote you a quick email to say, we're on this, we'll get to you within our SLA, but that's pretty much it. So here, if you imagine this was an existing workflow, we've dropped in an AI action. And this is now the first thing that runs. And what prompt have we given it? We've said the input is a question asked by a user to an IT service help desk. Return a few paragraphs of how they could solve the problem on their own. Make the advice succinct, use Markdown, just give the advice. And we're going to pass in the user's question to the AI. And the point here is that the AI is going to be much more quick than an IT help desk person. And so it can give an immediate answer. Maybe it won't be a perfect answer, so we'll keep the case open. But then if it is a good answer, the user can say, yes, that helped, and we can automatically close the case. Let's take a look at it. I'm going to use a real problem here that we have with pretty much every new starter who joins Tines, where because of the Mac security settings, it's difficult to screen share on Zoom. So let's say I can't share my screen on Zoom. Says I need to adjust Mac settings. Let's press get help. And from the user's perspective here, they're just seeing a loading state. They might not know exactly what's going on. Behind the scenes, we started running the AI action. And once it's done and the AI has figured out the recommended solution, we're also creating our case in our case management system, but we're telling the user that first pass. So a team member will be in touch soon. Until then, here's what our AI assistant recommends that you try. See if this helps. To share your screen on Zoom with a Mac, follow these steps. And I'm just reading it here. Check. This is exactly correct. So this is genuinely the correct answer. So perhaps the user will say, I'm all set now. And this has, what's just happened? We've closed the case in the case management system. The IT team have just met their SLA. They've probably made their stats look a little bit nicer because that was a really, really fast resolution. And what I'm demoing here isn't so much this exact use case, but rather just how easy it was to drop in this AI block to make this workflow, this existing workflow, a little bit better. And really two things I want to note there. The first is, this is the power of this technology being an action. We could have made this a feature of Pages, but by making it an action, it plays really nice with every other object in the system because actions are like the core building blocks of Tines. So I think we have, with the AI action, quite literally brought AI to the core of Tines. The second thing I want to point out is that, I think these AI features are definitely going to enable whole new types of workflows for sure. But I'm just as excited about them making existing workflows a little bit better. So again, you can imagine this existing, previously just like this, right? Where the user submits, creates the case. This would have been a pre-existing workflow. We've just quickly up-leveled it with AI. And my mental model of how this is going to add a lot of value to a lot of Tines customers and users very soon is by incrementally improving so many little situations in so many different workflows. Okay, so those are a set of really simple examples. We looked across the time savings you get in automatic mode and some of the smarts and the intelligence that you can tap into at any point in your workflow in the AI action. All right, so I alluded to this earlier, but I want to spend a bit more time talking about our secure foundation. I have a list here too of the fact that there really are, we say it a lot of times, infinite use cases, but it's particularly true with these two features. We looked at some of these use cases today, things like converting a data structure. Something I didn't mention about automatic mode is that the code it writes, the Python, that code can use everything in the Python ecosystem. So it can use custom packages. And that allows for things like, statistically analyzing data using a powerful package like NumPy, for example. That's possible. The AI can tap into that power. Or converting between file formats or cryptographic dependencies, processing files and images. It's very, very powerful as well as usable. And then on the AI action, so many things you can do. One that I'll call out here that we didn't get into today was directing automation. So the combination of an AI action and a trigger action, which is like our if statement, is very powerful. You can ask the AI to give you a true false response, best guess on something, and you can direct automation in the right direction. Translation is another one. These language models are as good, if not better, than Google Translate, and that's just built in now to your tenant. So if you support multilingual flows in any way, that's a really interesting use case. But so many things you can do. But back to security. Again, I talked about this foundational layer that we spent a lot of time investing in, and that has enabled these features you're looking at today. So what do we mean specifically? What do we mean by private and secure? This is not marketing speak. This is quite a true direct claim, and I'm going to explain a little bit more. So the language models that we have here, in the AI action, you can choose between Anthropic Claude 3 and Meta Llama 3. These are all being hosted within our own infrastructure. So our cloud provider is AWS. This is entirely within AWS. We have made these language models just another service in our stack, like our database or other sort of internal technical services. And so when we say private, we mean literally within your stack, within our infrastructure. And when we say secure, we mean fits exactly within our existing security perimeter. So I think one way of proving this is if you look at our, our terms and conditions or our sub-processors list or various other kind of, legal requirements we have or compliance descriptions of our terms for compliance, none of them have changed with the introduction of these features because it sits within our existing security paradigm and perimeter. And this approach that we've built, it allows us to make a lot of very direct claims about the benefits. So here are some of them. Because it's part of our infrastructure, it's naturally in region. Again, just like any other piece or component of our infrastructure. It's fully private. Again, it's not this shared thing out in the open. it's within your stack. It's stateless, meaning that the data that you pass into the language model in your prompt and the response you get back from it, that's not persisted in the model in any way. It's a fully stateless type of technology. And then tenant scoped. So even those of you who are on our multi-tenant stacks, where infrastructure is being shared across different customers, we very carefully today apply tenant scoping to all of that. And that tenant scoping also applies to the language models. And there's a lot of nice no's that we can really attest to. So no internet. These things are not connected to the internet. There's no travel of your data across the public internet at any moment. There's zero training. So the model providers can't even see this infrastructure. We don't do any training. AWS guarantee also no training. And not just training on the data you're putting in, even training on the metadata. So things like usage metadata, there's a blanket no training guarantee. No storage. I mentioned it's a stateless service, but we, nor do our infrastructure partner AWS, store any of the inputs or the outputs to the service, and no logging. So I think what we've got here with this private and secure foundation is really the gold standard. I don't think it's possible, at least in the cloud, to be more private and secure than this. Self-hosted, of course, is something we're interested in. We have a lot of self-hosted customers. We're going to have more to share there quite soon. But yes, like I say, I really think we've reached sort of the gold standard here in terms of what's possible for privacy and security on cloud. Very happy with this. All right. With that addressed, it's time to hear from our very special guest. And so I'm delighted to welcome Tyler Talaga to the stage. Tyler is a staff engineer at MyFitnessPal. And Tyler, I feel like describing you as a power user of Tines is underselling it. You are one of our most accomplished builders for sure. Before we get stuck into some of the things you built, Tyler, I wonder, could you just take a moment to introduce yourself? Tell us about what you do at MyFitnessPal. Tell us about what you guys build using Tines.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, thanks for having me. It's awesome to be included in something like this. So I've been a staff engineer at MyFitnessPal for just over 2 years now. Obviously, Tines is pretty heavy workhorse for a lot of our processes that we have going on over here, but it's also a big part of my day to day. So I was initially hired on as a senior automation engineer. So IT, security alike, we're kind of automating everything that we get our hands on, as long as it's like sensible, safe, secure, and Tines helps us do that. So.
Amazing. And Tyler, you were a part of our early access program. So for the audience, I'll explain. We ran for about a month, I think, Tyler, an early access program where we gave access to these features to some of our existing user base, just to get that final feedback and polish before this release. So Tyler, you're going to show us a couple of things you built, but maybe before we jump into your first example, how did you feel about the early access program? Like, what was it like being involved?
Oh, it was fantastic. Yeah, I think like you touched on a lot of, or touched on early on, it kind of helps us improve some of our existing workflows. And I think that's where we saw a lot of like the immediate value, or like, oh, we can inject this here and make this better, and inject it here and provide something that we weren't able to provide before. But as well as like developing entirely new workflows where like this wasn't possible before. So now we could do X, you know. And then everybody, like as always, everybody was super receptive during the early access program. So it was awesome to be a part of.
Cool. I loved your breakdown there between, making existing workflows a bit better and then like net new things. I wonder, do you want to start with the first one? Like, can you share with the group an example of one of your pre-existing workflows that's gained some smarts thanks to these technologies?
Definitely. So just a bit of background. Obviously, we use Tines to automatically deploy Mac OS updates to our fleet. And this store has been in use just after I started. This is my first project at MyFitnessPal, actually. And for a while, basically what we did to kind of like season the update for like with like information pertaining to what its content and things like that was we would just include a link to the release notes. And if you viewed those, they're a little bit um, underwhelming, I guess. Not to like throw shade at Apple or anything like that, but you kind of have to like dig to see what's been patched and things like that. So when I started to work on what we're going to look at here is what I described to my director of security as like an exercise in hubris, because it uses like 3 different AI actions, 2 AI actions in an automatic mode. But basically what we're doing here is we're grabbing the release notes link for the latest release for Mac OS, and recently it was 14.5, right? Like you touched on, we've generated some code here to slice and dice the HTML that comes through. We obviously grab what's contained in that link and just pass the raw HTML down to the recipient action, right? And
And
then
it
we
looks like you've
pass.
used some libraries there, like Beautiful Soup.
That's exactly right. Yeah, exactly. So as well as regex. So what we do is we transform that raw HTML, and the table that we're actually interested in is this one right here. So you could see like if you're trying to do this with strictly formulas or even just Python, where you're like trying to figure this out, it's a little bit dicey. So I put this together while I was like in an airport waiting for my flight. It didn't take very much time at all. Like it's crazy how easy this was. But basically, what's passed down to the downstream AI action is an array of objects, and basically each object contains the title and the length. So if you look here, it's like we're interested in 14.5. Well, that's few, cells down. But what we do is we pass that and we say, okay, I want you to match the hyperlink that I'm looking for to the macOS title for which this update is, So because the titles can sometimes vary, it's not always Sonoma, it's not always macOS 14.5, it's not always macOS Sonoma 14.5. We ask the AI to match it up for us, and it's been pretty spot on so far. So essentially we say, hey, here's the input array that you're going to get from the upstream action. Here's the title that you're looking for because we get that from Apple's RSS feed. And then we pass that link that it spits out to an HTTP request. It just grabs that, and that's what's contained here. So this is all the HTML that we're passing to the recipient AI action again. And the ultimate goal here is to say, okay, what security content is present in this update and why should we care? So obviously everybody's very busy. I want the highlights. Give me the top 5 vulnerabilities for which this update is recommended for, and go ahead and recommend them based on likelihood and impact, right? So overall, like based on risk, you're the security engineer. Tell me why I should care. And what it does is it alerts our security team about the security content contained in that update. So it's been fantastic so far. What I'll probably end up doing is seasoning that with a little bit more of like from the NBD or something like that, because Apple's great to tell you like what was disclosed, what was fixed, but there's even more information out there. So I think we could even make this even better. But this is a very useful early state. So
And what was that last piece? So you would pull out the CVE title, maybe look that up in a different system, enrich some of that data there.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I would go direct to the NVD that like actually
Cool.
classifies the particular CVEs and just say, okay, what's your rating? Because obviously they're using like CVSS 3.1, I think, or something like that now. So tell me again, why I should care about this vulnerability. Are there any exploits out there? Does the attacker have to have hands on keyboard? Or can they do this if they're just attached to your network? Things like that. So
Amazing. Maybe just one more HTTP request action chain there straight after the AI could do the trick.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remarkable. Do you have an example? Fine if you don't have this to hand, Tyler, but would you be able to show us what it looks like on the other end? The Slack notification coming through?
Um, Honestly, I could probably find one for you, but it would take just a minute to
Yeah,
dig
no
that up.
props.
Actually,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think
Sorry about
I
that.
think it was fairly clear from the Apple page anyway. But amazing. I love here just the combination of the build time event transform and wanting the consistency of code in that case, and then the ability to sort of improvise based on how Apple changed things up by using the AI action. So pretty nice combination there. You mentioned then, like, as well as making some of your existing workflows like this one a bit better or a bit smarter, that you're doing some whole new things using the AI action. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so that brings us to this one. And credit where credit is due. The original idea for this was from our security engineer Caleb Williams, and we were on a call with Tynes one day, and he's like, "The change control request system is great, but unfortunately, the viewer for the story diffs is a little bit small, and it's a little bit hard to read as a human being, right?" So I've kind of like teed up some changes here. And if we go here, we see, okay, there are some changes that have been made. Basically, all I did was add this action and attach to this one. I've included a pill here to basically what we're doing here is we're getting underutilized stories. We're sorting them by when they were last run, and we want to bubble them up for visibility. We might say like, hey, this story is published, but it's not seeing a lot of action. Do we want to like amend this? Things like that. So obviously these are the actions that are, or the changes that are contained. It's a little hard to digest on the fly, especially if you're like context switching or something like that. And so Caleb was like, well, we have the AI action now. Why don't we have this digest what's contained in these story diffs? And I'm like, that's a brilliant idea. We need to
Well,
do
that's
that
amazing.
immediately.
Let me see if I'm getting this right. Let me explain back the problem. So
Mhm.
you're saying that um, you use change control, which is one of our
Mhm.
features that lets you kind of safely modify workflows and move from test to live. And you're using this all the time across the team, but it's a bit of work, right? When you're in this view changes panel, you're telling me that it's just kind of hard, especially as somebody who's maybe not so experienced with Tines, to understand what all these changes exactly mean. Um,
Yeah, exactly.
and I think so. You're using this as we're changing the story, um, and this sort of represents a change to any story. That's change control, right?
That's exactly
Um,
right. Yeah.
okay. And so
And,
next, you're
and to get
gonna basically give us a new view of those changes, if I'm getting that right.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, we've just sort of like inject this AI action and we say, hey, you're an expert automation engineer. It's specifically in times, of course. We want to like kind of like scope its breadth of knowledge since there's so much. And we feed it the change control request. So it can see like pretty easily, like it bubbles up the author and when the change is made into what story. But also we upstream, we get the change request that's being made, right? So, and within that change request, we're able to provide the AI story diffs. So that's just an array of the two stories that exist essentially, right? And we just say, okay, here's what you're supposed to do with this information. Just give me a very concise summary, and we're going to try this out and see how it works. We've created a Slack channel just for this. So we request these changes be pushed through, and then if all went well, we see that it kind of came through here. I'm working on some formatting, so it's not perfect. But let's see. So the key changes in this change control request are I added a new link from get utilized underutilized stories to sort stories actions. That's true. I added a new sort stories action, and then it also sorts those stories based on the last run field. So that's all contained within that pill. If we go back, we could see that that is exactly true. That's what we've done here.
Wow.
Um, so the AI was pretty spot on. It was human readable text, so it kind of like saved me some time. Like I could digest that in a couple of minutes here. So I'm like, yeah, definitely that looks fine. I'm gonna go ahead and approve that. And we could also see that I didn't name that change, nor did I provide a description. So the AI examined just raw JSON and it spat out what we saw just a second ago. So we're gonna push that to live, and then just sort of like closing the loop. What we should see is yeah. So the notification is updated. We don't really need the AI summary anymore. We just know like okay, obviously and as a good engineer I would title this request so we were able to like reference what changes were made without the description but yeah, so that's pretty much what we've got going on here.
Amazing. This follows a very proud tradition, I think, of our users sort of bending Tines to build almost like first party product features themselves in Tines. So I'm seeing so many aspects of that here with like the webhook for our our change control notifications feature, using the Tines API, using Slack API, using these new features. But I think it really speaks to something kind of profound about the benefit of making the AI action an action. Again, like I actually think we should steal your idea here or Caleb's idea and add this to the platform because it's extremely compelling. But I love that we've started with the sort of the low level flexible tool that you can use to your heart's content to do anything. Be that making an existing workflow better or beating us to the punch and adding like a platform feature to your usage of Tines. So yeah, props to yourself and Caleb and the team. Really, really impressive stuff.
Thanks so much. Yeah, you guys make it very easy to add new features, so we're all for it.
Cool. Finally, Tyler, anything you want to do next with the AI features? Anything that's on your bucket list?
I think I have too long of a list if we're being honest. The only constraint is time at this point, so
Yeah. All right. Well, amazing. Thank you again for sharing your work, and really appreciate it. We'll look forward to stealing many more of your guys' good ideas in the near future.
my pleasure. Thanks a
Awesome.
lot, Stephen.
Thank you, of course. All right. So finally, whenever you hear a product demo, hopefully this has been a good one, an exciting one, and you're wanting to get your hands on things. There's always this inevitable question, which is like, what's the kicker? What about pricing? And there's a little bit of a story to tell here in how pricing works. So I want to explain that. I'm going to go through the two features one by one, starting with automatic mode. So we really consider automatic mode to be a a usability feature. There's very few things that you couldn't do categorically before in Tines that you now can do, but it's a lot of things that become 5x, 10x, 100x faster to implement as demonstrated. But the interesting part about the AI is only active when you're building. And from our point of view, we love people being in Tines and building. We love the product to be more usable. And as a result, we do not want to penalize the usage of this feature at all. So for that reason, it's the right thing to do to make this entirely free for all of our users. And so whether you're a Community Edition user or a paying customer, you will have full free access to automatic mode. Secondly, then, the AI action. So again, this is a new 8th action type. Different to automatic mode, the AI here is invoked every single time the action runs. And so for that reason, this is actually a fairly costly thing for us to provision because we pay each time the action runs. And something we love in Tines are complicated, high-scale workflows, and these AI actions could run actually very frequently in certain workflows. So this we can't adopt exactly the same model here, but we also want to be very generous in what we're allowing. So let me explain how it's going to work. The AI action is going to be based on a credits usage system. And so each time the action runs, it will deduct from a number of credits that you have. And we're going to make 5,000 execution credits per month available to all of our paying customer tenants. So we think this is a pretty generous amount. What that means is by default, that's 5,000 executions on the default model. If you choose some of the other models, it may consume a few more credits. One of them is 10 credits per model per execution. One is 12. This is all documented too, so we'll explain this. We're also making some credits available to our community tenants. So all of you Community Edition users will get 50 credits per month included for free. Now, beyond the 5,000 executions or credits per month, if you really want to lean in and use these features at scale or use this feature at scale, we're going to be selling very large bundles of execution credits. And if you want to get more details on the exact pricing or get this added to your tenant, just speak to your customer-facing team. But what I will say is that we have priced this to be extremely competitive. And the reason we've done this is that we know, if you want to bring along your own AI provider, it's not difficult to do that in Tines, right? We let you connect any API. But we think the inbuilt language models are much more private and secure. And so we want to make this just a no-brainer option. So we've priced this to be very competitive versus all external options. And really, our philosophy here is that we don't make money selling credits. We make money selling great workflows. So for that reason, we're not seeking to penalize your usage of AI in Tines at all. And yes, like I say, if you're interested, chat to the customer team. I think you'll be pretty pleasantly surprised at the generosity of the pricing. Okay, finally, before we get to some of the questions that have flowed in, I want to just say that, this is really just the beginning. I said at the start of this call that it was a big day for Tines, and it is because we've gone from sort of 0 to 1 in the existence of our AI features. From here on out, now, especially now that we've established this secure and private foundation, we intend to build many, many more AI features, big and small. They'll all be based on that secure foundation. And we'll probably get back to our normal operating procedure here, which is, shipping continuously, posting on our What's New. Maybe there'll be a few more big bangs in the future as well, but expect to see more steady progress from here on out. So finally, I'll take a look at some of the questions that have flowed in and see what we've got. So first question says, I might have missed this, but can I bring my own language model? And the answer is sort of. So you can very, very easily bring your own, OpenAI or Azure or Anthropic or whatever API key to Tines as a credential. And then you can connect to that AI provider using their API. We have pretty good templates for most of the providers in our template library. So yes, you can absolutely bring your own LLM to use to make your workflows better, sort of as an alternative to the AI action. In general, I think, as before, the data transport, even if it's going to a secure destination, it's just a new risk for you to think about. And so I think the default option should be just to use our secure and private, local AI, but you can absolutely bring it there for the AI action. For features that we build, like automatic mode, that is using our secure AI by default. And currently you can't point that at separate providers, but we might consider that in the future, especially for self-hosted environments at times. Another question that came in here, somebody says, I am the tenant owner, but I'm not seeing any setting to turn on these features. There are no instructions posted that work for my tenant. So there might be something that's going wrong with your specific tenant. What I saw earlier on mine was there's in the main menu, there's an AI settings link, and there's a toggle to enable them. But if you're having any trouble, just reach out to us on Intercom or anywhere else, and we'll get back to you very quickly and get you unblocked. A few more questions, just 2 or 3 more. Can you tell us more about how you built the secure and private model infrastructure? Absolutely. So as I mentioned briefly, it's all running on AWS, who are our core infrastructure provider, and where we keep, the perimeter behind which we keep all secure customer data. And specifically, we're using a couple of great services in AWS. AWS Bedrock and AWS Private Link are the 2 most notable. And that's giving us a lot of the guarantees that I discussed earlier. I am actually going to be giving a bit more of a deep dive on this topic at AWS Reinforce, which is a conference taking place in a couple of weeks. So anyone who's there, any AWS nerds in the audience who's heading to Philadelphia or tuning in otherwise, feel free to check out my talk there where we'll go much deeper on this. It should be posted on the events section of the Times website. And we'll probably put that public afterwards also, just to give a real technical deep dive on how we built this secure foundation. And then another question here. So how does change control work for the AI action? And I love this question because it touches a little bit on the demo we saw from Tyler, where they augmented change control. But the answer really is that change control works exactly the same for the AI action as it does for any other action. And again, this is getting back to, I think, the upsides of building AI as an action in Tines. It's getting to inherit so many aspects of our system, like pages, like change control, like retries, like the ability to connect in interesting ways to other actions in a story. And it's getting all of that more or less for free. A few other pieces of praise coming in, folks saying thank you, some excitement. We really appreciate it. It's great to hear it. And looks like we got one more buzzer beater question here. So what were the reasons behind choosing the 2 LLM models rather than others such as ChatGPT? That's a fantastic question. So it really comes down to wanting to establish that secure and private foundation. So we looked at, there's a potential trade-off here between quality and security, right? So we did not like the idea of having to do AI via API, because once it's AI via API, we have to make a lot of trust on what's behind, the API side of the relationship. Much rather keep it in our infrastructure. So because our infrastructure is already on AWS, I guess we were lucky enough to discover this amazing service on AWS called Bedrock. And Bedrock, you pointed out, the 2 language models. I think Bedrock's really killer edge is that it contains a lot of different language models. Our favorites currently there are the Claude 3 models. So Haiku, Sonnet, and we'll probably add Opus pretty soon. These are like some of the very best models that exist today. They're definitely up there with the excellent ChatGPT models too. But I love the fact that Bedrock also gives us access to open source models. So Llama 3 is very, very, very high quality. And we're seeing, innovation every week in open source models. In fact, just today, there was a very exciting new model launched from Mixtral. And we expect to see that to be available pretty soon on our platform also. So to an extent, we kind of got lucky in finding that there was a really secure option that fit our needs, that had the models of high enough quality, but really great security guarantees. And then I think there's also a lot of upside in the future where we'll be able to offer you a really exciting range of different models, all with that security profile. All right, just checking there's no more last second questions, but all that remains, I think, is to say thank you so much for joining us. I cannot wait to see what you all build with these AI features. As Tyler demonstrated, not only can you make your existing and new workflows better, you can also start to give us ideas for first-party AI features we might want to build. So we'll look forward to your feedback and much more to come soon. Thank you so much, everybody.